EV chargers will be rolled out across New South Wales as part of the state government's response to rising demand for the vehicles. Reporter Max Tillman joins us now from Sydney. Max, what will this rollout look like?
Well, the Premier, Chris Minns, says it's time to double down on New South Wales' commitment to electric vehicles, particularly the government's strategy, which has been running in earnest since 2021 with that initial investment of around $150 million. The idea behind that very early investment was to have fast charging stations every 100 kilometres across the state's road network. But the big issue standing in the way of that progression is regional and remote parts of the state. In fact, it was never more apparent than over the Easter long weekend, where there were huge lines for charging stations in Gundagai in southern New South Wales. It really made apparent that the majority of charging stations do remain in major metropolitan areas and more broadly in eastern parts of New South Wales. And that's a really big part of this announcement today of $100 million in extra funding for the government's electric vehicle strategy. What they'll be looking to do is shore up that infrastructure in regional parts of the state. In fact, around $45 million of that $100 million will be devoted towards building more charging stations, particularly fast charging stations. The government says they could potentially see up to 1,000 additional stations over the next few years. It's really targeting the regions as well, where the government will be investing further funding into training up around 2,000 regional mechanics in sort of maintenance and repairing those electric vehicles, as well as those charging stations. It is very much range anxiety that for a lot of people in New South Wales have withheld them from making the jump from the Bowser to the battery. Now, as well as this, we are expecting to see some changes for freight companies, in particular the government's EV fleet incentive program that will now be encapsulating small to medium-sized vehicles. The government does hope that will give freight companies the opportunity to electrify their fleet. And in fact, it is those diesel prices and in fact the supply of diesel that have spurred the government in the last few weeks to relax freight weight limits as well as delivery times to essentially give those companies more bang for their buck when it comes to diesel. So certainly a lot of work underway, but with a real incentive and a real direction towards regional New South Wales.
And Max, what's the government had to say?
Well, Chris Minns has absolutely doubled down. He said that New South Wales is truly the envy of the rest of the country when it comes to renewable energy. It should be mentioned, of course, that the Premier of the state is himself the owner of an electric vehicle. He was speaking earlier today where he said that it's important that New South Wales double down on this plan because essentially it will give more opportunity for people, particularly in regional parts of the state, to make the move to electric vehicles. Let's take a quick listen to what he had to say.
We're rated as the best state for investment for renewable energy and the best state when it comes to electric vehicle investment and government strategy. But we want to double down on it, and we think now is the time to double down on it to send a clear message to those in the marketplace who are considering buying their next vehicle that they should be or could be an electric vehicle.
Now, the New South Wales government says there are currently around 117,000 electric vehicles registered in New South Wales, but they do want to see those numbers rise. This is all part of a wider plan by the New South Wales government to reduce emissions by 50% by 2030. In fact, it is transport itself that is the second largest emitter in New South Wales, road transport making up around 87% of that figure.